During World War II, the Italian front was filled with confusion, shifting alliances, and exhausted soldiers who were simply trying to survive another day. In the middle of all this chaos, one event stood out so strongly that it became one of the strangest and most human moments of the entire war. It involved a single man, an Italian soldier named Antonio Mendez, and a surrender unlike anything the American troops had ever seen. To understand his story, you have to understand the moment Italy was living through. By 1943, Italy had surrendered to the Allies. The government collapsed, and the country fell into total disorder. But the war didn't end for the soldiers. The Germans quickly took control of large parts of northern and central Italy, forcing Italian soldiers to keep fighting, sometimes against their will, and sometimes without knowing who the real enemy even was anymore. For soldiers like Antonio Mendez, it was a hopeless situation. Food was running out, morale was collapsing, and every direction felt like death. He had seen enough destruction, enough loss, enough confusion. He was tired, not just physically but mentally. He was fighting for a cause that no longer existed and for a government that had already surrendered. Many Italian soldiers felt exactly the same way, but they didn't know how to escape the war. Walking away could mean being shot by their own side, or by the Germans, or by the Allies. But one day, Antonio made a decision that was simple, bold, and dangerous. Instead of waiting to be captured, instead of running away, instead of hiding, he decided to surrender by himself. The way he did it is what made his story unforgettable. Antonio picked up a white napkin, not a flag, not a cloth, just a small napkin he had kept from a ration meal. He tied it to a stick to show he meant no harm. Then he picked up a bottle of wine, something he had saved from a local village. To him, it wasn't just a drink, it was a peace offering. A way of saying, I'm done with fighting, and I come in peace. He walked alone toward the American camp. Imagine the moment, a single soldier walking straight toward the enemy, not hiding, not running, just moving calmly with his hands visible. The American troops saw him coming and were completely confused. They didn't know if he was a spy, a distraction, or someone who had lost his mind in the middle of battle. But as he got closer, they realized he wasn't holding a weapon. No rifle, no knife, just a bottle of wine and a white napkin. When the Americans shouted at him to stop, he did. When they told him to raise his hands, he lifted them immediately. And then, in broken English, he said something they never forgot. No fight, I surrender. That was it, no speeches. No negotiation, just a man who wanted the war to end for him, personally, right there on that day. The Americans lowered their guns and approached him slowly. They took the bottle from his hands. Some of them even smiled because they had never seen such a surrender in their lives. Most soldiers surrendered in groups. Others surrendered after being surrounded. But Antonio surrendered alone, and with a gift. News of the one-man surrender spread quickly through the American lines, and soldiers talked about it for months. It became a symbol of something rare during the war, a moment of simple humanity in a time when humanity was disappearing. Antonio was taken as a prisoner of war, but he was treated well. For him, captivity was 1,000,000 times better than the battlefield. He finally had safety, food, and the hope of survival. And most importantly, he didn't have to fight anymore. After the war ended, he returned home alive. Many of the men he once served with never made it back. Antonio's surrender may have seemed small in the grand scale of World War II, but it carried a meaning much larger than the moment itself. It reminded the world that behind every uniform is a person, someone who feels fear, exhaustion, and the desire to live beyond the war. The story of Antonio Mendez is remembered today not because it changed the outcome of the war, but because it showed what courage can look like when everything else has fallen apart. Sometimes the bravest soldier is the one who chooses peace over pride and life over violence. If you enjoyed this story and want more powerful true stories from history, like, comment, and subscribe to The Driven Tales.